You're either stupid or you're just sick.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball, on Instagram the same, and facebook.com/redrockbasketball. What we're going to do is finish off something we did earlier in the week, and that was the potential breakout players. We've done the Eastern Conference one already. We had an interruption in the middle of the week as we looked at the NBA schedule release, and today we're going to be doing the Western Conference potential breakout players. So,
let's get to it.
Before we get to that, Michael Bolton, a couple of things that I do need to touch on. Patreon subscribers, you obviously got first access to all the Red Rock listener leagues. You got access to the Red Rock Dynasty League. In fact, you took up all of the spots in the 30-team Rotisserie Dynasty League, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit later as well, assuming I remember. So if you're watching this live, give me a reminder if I don't talk about that league. But the new thing for Patreon subscribers who subscribe $3 or more per month, access to a private Slack group, a Slack channel. If you don't know what Slack is, it's like a messaging type app that's great for communicating. We have different channels in there. There's a DFS section, a redraft section, a dynasty section, a non-fantasy NBA section, off-topic sections. You can DM me. You can discuss with all the other Patreons that are in there, lineup building, player decisions, player discussions. So if you are a $3 plus Patreon subscriber, or you're thinking of becoming a Patreon subscriber and helping to support the show, you also now get access to this Slack channel where you can access me for my thoughts on drafts and lineups and decisions and general discussion, and the rest of the Patreon group as well. So if you were thinking about becoming a Patreon sponsor, if you do that now, you do get access to this private Slack channel, and we've got, I think we've got about half the Patreons or the patrons in there at the moment. The rest just are looking to sign up and take, which I sent out sometime last night. The rest of the guys just looking to get in there and start things off. So it's been a great take up so far, and I think it's an added feature that will give you a little bit more bang for your buck, in addition to the content that I provide on this show. So that's that part of it done. Basketball Monster projections still going along strong. We're going to have it done before the end of September. Oh, sorry, not September, before the end of August. It might be the end of next week. It might be the start of the week after. I'm not 100% sure yet, but that will be coming out. If you've got any feedback for things you'd like to see on Basketball Monster or things you'd like to hear on this podcast, I did post a thread on the Fantasy B-Ball subreddit over on Reddit, where you can leave your feedback of things you'd like to see, things you don't like to see, things I can do better, things I can do less of, all that sort of stuff. So there's a thread over there that you can talk about that on. The other thing I want to talk about today is I sent out a tweet yesterday talking about 9 category leagues and saying that turnovers are a shit category. Got a little bit of blowback. I don't know, that's to be expected. Nearly every time I talk about turnovers, for some reason, people get super defensive about turnovers. I said turnovers is a shit category. It's a shit category. What else could we make as our 9th category? And the options I put up in the poll were split rebounds into offensive and defensive rebounds, split field goal percentage into 2-point and 3-point percentage, which is what we're doing this year in the Red Rock head-to-head listener leagues, seeing how that goes, using assist to turnover ratio, or another option. The most common other option that people threw out as a potential new standard ninth category was double-doubles. I'll tell you why I don't like double-doubles as a category. I think on the surface they look good. They do help the big man. All that stuff is great. But there is a very lineated drop-off. You can stream anybody in for 3-pointers. Someone can come in, Jason Terry can come in and play 11 minutes and hit 2 threes. Bruno Caboclo could come in and get you a steal in 8 minutes if he ever decides he's going to play an NBA game. So for players in deeper leagues, that's fine. Anyone can come in and score 2 points, 4 points, 6 points, and help your team out in their 12 minutes. Double-doubles, there's a group of guys who get them, and that's it. That's it. There's a group of guys that get them. So if your league goes any more than 12 teams deep, that double-double category just disappears. It's gone. You can't stream for it. You can't add guys off the. It's just very, very. It's just a category that just drops. And the reason is you have to get to that 10 rebound and 10 point threshold to actually achieve a double-double. You can't go in there and grab 3 boards and go, well, I got 0.3 of a double-double. You have to get those 10 boards, and there's just a very definite group of players who actually have the opportunity to get that, and that makes those deeper leagues and working the waiver wire really tough. So that's one of the reasons I don't like that. I don't love assist to turnover ratio either. Again, I'm trying the 2.3 point this year. I also think that the splitting of rebounds is fine. But I want to talk about turnovers just for a second as well. That people, you have to have turnovers because I want fantasy to reflect real life value, and turnovers are super important. That's one of the big arguments that I was given. And my rebuttal to that is that the MVP of the NBA last year, everyone's rusty trombone recipient of Fantasy Player of the Year, Russell Westbrook, had the second most turnovers in NBA history. And we don't look at Russ and go, you know what, too many turnovers, shit season. The most turnovers in NBA history went to Jim Harden from last season. And these are the two guys who were number 1 and number 2 in MVP, and they were number 1 and number 2 in fantasy. Now, if you look at overall 9-cat rankings, they weren't. They were like 6th and 7th. So if you want to say that turnovers included in fantasy value reflects real life, do you think that Harden and Westbrook were the 6th and 7th ranked players last year, and that Anthony Davis was the second best player? Or that Karl Anthony Towns was a better player than Westbrook and Harden because he was ranked 5th and Harden and Westbrook were ranked 6th and 7th? Do you want to say that Jimmy Butler was better than LeBron James last year because in 9-cat rankings he was? I hate turnovers because they're a category that if you play no one, you actually do better in that category. If you are a tanking team, it's not setting your lineup, you win that category. You win by inaction. And also, in addition to this with turnovers, and I've said this to a few people I've argued with, turnovers don't correlate to good basketball. You know, the best teams don't have the fewest turnovers. The worst teams don't necessarily have the most turnovers. You can cherry pick examples. Like the 2 teams that had the most turnovers per 100 possessions were the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets. And you can look at that and go, you know what? They were both terrible. I understand that. They were the worst team and the 3rd worst team, or 5th worst team, whatever the Sixers were. Okay. The 4 teams with the lowest amount of turnovers didn't make the playoffs at all. In fact, out of the top 10 teams in fewest turnovers, 4 made the playoffs. In the bottom 10 teams, in terms of the 10 teams who had the most turnovers, 4 of those made the playoffs. So basically, correlating turnovers to individual success or team success doesn't really fly to me. The Golden State Warriors had the 9th most total turnovers in the entire NBA last season, and they're considered the greatest team of all time. And if you want to say they played at a faster pace, that's fine. We'll go to per possession. They had the 11th highest turnover rate per possession. So, you know, there was more than half the teams better than them in that category. So that's why, they're some of the reasons I don't like turnovers. The other argument I'll put forward for turnovers is if turnovers had never been included as a standard fantasy category from the start of fantasy basketball, not one person would be clamoring saying, you know what, I reckon we need to add turnovers into fantasy basketball. I really, really think that this game is missing turnovers. I think we love having the 9th category to split ties and all that sort of stuff. But I think if it hadn't have been included as that initial category, no one would be saying, we really, really need turnovers. I just really need turnovers because I want to make sure that Harden gets punished for having 5 turnovers. He deserves to be punished. Whereas a guy like Otto Porter, who doesn't touch the ball, he deserves a huge boost to become the 20th best player. And if you think that Otto Porter was the 20th best player in fantasy basketball last year, you're not right. He just wasn't. But those minuscule turnovers really boost his numbers up. I think the future of the 9th category is going to be hustle stats, whether that's one of the hustle stats or a combination hustle stats. Now, NBA.com tracks things like deflections. They track contested shots. They track charges drawn. So something like that, adding those up per game, that could be the 9th category. I think that would be a very, very interesting category. I think you get the shots contested thing really helping the big men as well, and that will give them an extra category. So I'd like to see fantasy providers, ESPN, Fantrax, Yahoo, CBS, getting those hustle stats in there, making a combined hustle metric, making it just contested shots. But I think that is the way to go. A few people suggested to me true shooting percentage. I like that, but I don't like having it in conjunction with field goal and free throw because it takes into consideration both of those, and I'm not a fan of double dipping, much like I don't like field goals made or free throws made because that's like double dipping in the points category. I'm not a fan of that either. But I can see having true shooting in there, replacing field goals and free throws, and then adding something else on top of it. I totally think that that's a way to go. But I think that hustle stats could be the future of that 9th category. I'm sure that people are going to argue with me ad nauseum about why turnovers are great and why you need them and why they're absolutely fantastic. And I just don't agree. I just hate them. I think that they skew values. They don't make complete sense as a category. And I never pay any attention to them when drafting because I just don't. I just want the guys to grab me the stats or the percentages in those percentage categories to really start helping me out and get those counting numbers going. And honestly, if you then have a week where you're a little bit lower in games played, you actually start to compete in turnovers. So you can be competitive in those games where you're at a game's disadvantage, which is another reason that people seem to use as reasons behind it. Oh, you need categories. What if you've got fewer games, you need to be able to win a category? Well, even if you have high turnovers, if you play less games, your turnovers come down anyway, so you've got more of a chance of winning that, even if you haven't set out to deliberately get as fewer turnovers as possible. That's enough of me talking about turnovers. Again, majority of you are going to disagree with me. I understand that, but that is my statement on those, and that's me just expanding some thoughts that I had when I tweeted that out yesterday. Let's talk about Western Conference breakouts. And this conference, because of the strength of the conference, because of the migration of players, because of the quality of the teams, there are less opportunities for players to break out. On Chicago, it's a shit show. Anything can happen. There is spots everywhere. On Atlanta, there are opportunities at nearly every position for players to break out. Brooklyn, the same thing. Indiana, because they're shit piles. There's nothing good happening there. In the West, it's all very set. It's all very solid. We know what these teams are. They're talent-laden squads where we know how the roles are going to be. And even the younger teams, it feels like their rosters and rotations are fairly set. Doesn't mean I haven't been able to find people here, but the majority of bigger breakout candidates are going to come from the Eastern Conference just because of that talent disparity and because of the more opportunities that have opened up with the departure of Jim Butler, with the departure of Paulie George. All those positions opening up enables these guys to jump forward into those spots. But let's talk about this Western Conference now. We'll start with the Dallas Mavericks. I don't love putting rookies in this category, but Dennis Smith has to be that guy. Look, his ADP is actually 96, which I thought it would be a bit higher than that. I think that's absolutely perfect for where he can be, and I actually think at that spot he has significant upside. So I reckon that he is a really good pick, and I wouldn't hate going with him at even 80 or so. There is still some concern with how Carlisle is going to treat him as a rookie, but let's be honest, Yogi Ferrell is fine, but he's not good. He's not a good starting point guard. Seth Curry had some moments as a point guard last year. JJ Barea is also always Carlisle's reliable crutch, but I think that Smith is going to have minimum 30 minutes a game this season and possibly push even further, and that's going to push his numbers up. So he is an interesting one. The other one is Nerlens Noel. Now, we don't know what the bloody hell's going on with Nerlens Noel. We can throw him in with JaMychal Green and Mason Plumlee and Nikola Mirotic. Or Alex Len. We don't know where they're playing. We all but assume they're going to be back on their teams, whether that's on a qualifying offer, whether that's on a below-market multi-year deal. I'm assuming that Noel is back in Dallas. I also think he's going to play more than we saw down the stretch last year, although his minutes will go up once Dirk retires in a couple of seasons' time. But I think that Noel is a guy that has top 30 upside. Probably not this year. Probably won't happen this year. I'll be stunned if it happened this year, to be honest. But if he played 30 minutes a game, that's where he can get to with his ability to be a 1.5 steal, 1.5 blocks, maybe pushing 2 and 2, which would be a huge number. But he can do that. Rebounding, his shooting is improved, his scoring is improved. He is an interesting guy there. The other guys are fairly locked in. Wes Matthews, the pencil, Harrison Barnes, Dirk, Seth Curry. I think they're going to be basically what we expect from them. I don't expect Dorian Finney-Smith to take a leap forward. I think that their other guys are sort of locked into their value. But Smith and Noel are the two guys who could really take some significant steps forward. Let's move on now to the Denver Nuggets. We all know Nikola Jokic, my boy. I had someone accuse me the other day of being a Jokic hater, which was absolutely astonishing to me because I didn't put him as the number one player I'll take in a dynasty draft. That is astonishing to me that anyone would accuse me of being a Jokic hater. I can't say 100% for sure, but I was on this guy before pretty much anybody. I've been spruiking his worth for 2 years, for a very, very long time, and he's a top 10 player this year. All it's going to come down to is, does he cut out the stupid fouls? Paul Millsap doesn't bother me. He's got 20 and 10 potential, with triple one potential, with elite percentages, with 7 assist potential. Like this is where we are. So we're not talking about him as a breakout. He is what he is. He's brilliant. Like he's fantastic. His ADP is 14. That's a steal. They're not the guys he's not the guy that I want to talk about as a breakout guy. There's a fairly obvious one to me, and that is the Blue Arrow, Jamal Murray, who's got an ADP of 113. I think that he challenges for top 50. Probably doesn't get there, but challenges that, and almost definitely is top 75. He will be the starting point guard, in my opinion, with Manny Moutier backing him up. But the Blue Arrow is a guy that's going to up his scoring, hit some threes. He's not going to get 7-8 assists a game because Jokic is going to be running a lot of things, but he should be able to get 4 to 5 pretty comfortably, get a steal, have that elite free throw percentage, and hopefully get some efficiency going. He is a guy that you should be targeting the shit out of in those later rounds if he happens to fall. If he gets anywhere past 70, the Blue Arrow is getting onto all of my teams. It might be a bit of a rocky start. It's not as though it's not without risk, because there is the chance that Malone goes, what is going on with this bloke, and goes back to Jameer Nelson or throws Manny Moutier back in there. That is a potential. Or does he get traded in these Kyrie Irving rumors that come out? Regardless, the Blue Arrow is the guy that I like here as the breakout guy. The guy we want to look a little bit deeper is my other boy on this team, and that's Juancho Hernan-Gomez. There's a big spot opening up at the 3 where the Rooster Danilo Gallinari used to sit. We all assume it's going to be Wilson Chandler going there, and I think that's fair enough. But Juancho is going to be the backup 3. I think he's going to play some minutes at the 4 as well. He should be playing ahead of Ken Fareed at the 4. He should be playing ahead of Will Barton at the 3, in my opinion. You know, I don't hold Will Barton in the highest of esteem as a player. I think Juancho is a guy that should be getting at least 20 minutes a night. And if he starts to show what I know he can show as an elite rebounder, 3-point shooter, very, very good defender, decent passer, he could overtake Wilson Chandler, because Chandler is who he is at this point. He's a reliable sixth man type of guy who has had some issues and some disgruntledness in Denver. And I could see Juancho leaping above him at some point this season if he takes the necessary steps forward. And I don't think that's a crazy thing. So for deeper leagues, you need to be all over Juancho. You need to, if any league that goes deeper than 14 team leagues, he's a draftable guy without a question to me. He's a guy to watch in other circumstances, but I think that he is a real interesting breakout-y type candidate for this Denver Nugget team outside of the Blue Arrow, who's the more I guess the more how do we say it, guaranteed without it being a guarantee. Let's look at the Golden State Warriors, and there's not much happening here breakout-wise. We know who their best 5 players are: Steph, KD, Draymond, Clay, and Andre Iguodala, with Zaza Pachulia as the 6th starter. But the guy that's going to take a step forward is going to be Big Pat McCaw. And by big, I mean extremely small. He is going to be absorbing some of Ian Clark's minutes. Remember, Uncle P, Nick Young, is there now, so he will take some of those minutes. But McCaw is a guy that was so impressive last season. He's going to be groomed to take the Andre Iguodala role in a few years' time. I don't think that he's really got much chance of snatching standard league value this year, but I think he's going to take a significant step forward this season as opposed to last season, as he becomes a more reliable player, as his defense improves, as his shooting improves. I think that he's going to be a deeper league guy that you do want to have a piece of, and someone to watch when Iguodala goes out, because he'll get hurt at some point if KD goes down. If, say, Draymond goes down and they want to start KD at the 4, there's going to be an opportunity there for McCaw, because once again, this team is pretty thin on the wings. Behind Thompson and Durant, we've got Iguodala, McCaw, and Young, and that's really it. There's Shawnee Livingston there as well, whose effectiveness did wane last season. He's still around as the backup point guard, but I can see McCaw getting some of those minutes there also. So he is a player to watch. He's in a contract year, and players who have who are restricted free agents and head into their contract year. That we talk about contract years, and it's often a bullshit thing, but players at the end for a restricted free agent contract years, that is often a thing. That is often something that is doable. So he is a player to watch there, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for that to occur. Got Bobby Madry, who always watches this show live. He says, I'll be happy when Farid ends up on another team. I think he can be valuable in fantasy on the right team. He's terrible. He's a bad player. He's not a great fantasy player, Bobby, and I'll tell you why I don't think he is, because he offers points and rebounds. No steals, no blocks, no assists, no threes, poor free throw percentage, decent field goal percentage, but he's also just not good enough to be a 26, 28 minute a night guy on teams. He just doesn't fit the modern NBA. But I know there is huge appeal in Farid. People love Farid. I'm not one of those guys. And he also says that Uncle P will be a 3-point streamer. Yeah, look, as I say, 3-pointers can be found on the waiver wire all the time. I wouldn't be shocked if Young hits 2 threes a game this season, and that makes him an absolute... He can be Troy Daniels from last year, the guy that plays 17 minutes a night and hits 2 threes a game and has use in that way. So I can totally see that. You're not going to want to own him in most cases, but he absolutely can be that streaming type of player. For Houston now, much like Golden State, and with these good teams, we look at them and there's not huge opportunities for players to really step forward. We know who Jim Harden is. Also, don't be banking on a massive step back from Jim Harden this season. He will still step back, but I've heard of drafts where Harden is slipping to 6 and Curry's... actually, let me... Okay, I'll talk about where Harden is slipping to 6. If Harden slips to 6 and I'm at pick 6, I am definitely getting erect if that happens. That is ridiculous. I've also seen Steph Curry slip to 8 and Kevin Durant slip to 7 in drafts. And I've seen that, and people say to me, oh yeah, but they've got to share the ball. And I go, they did that last year, and they didn't finish 7th and 8th. So why would they drop 4 spots this year? Like, what changed? What makes them say, oh, we're just going to be significantly worse this year? And there is going to be potentially more resting for them. That's a possibility. But why are they going to be so much worse? Interesting. Anyway, back to Houston. Chrissy Paul's there. Jimmy Harden's there. We know that situation. Trevor Rees, Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson. PJ Tucker joins. He's not really a breakout guy. Luke Marmute, not a breakout guy. My man is the man in the middle. Big Clint Capella, who I thought was on his way to a breakout year last year, broke his leg, still was really impressive, and doesn't need 30 minutes to be an impact guy. He's a top 100 guy in 25 minutes a night. And if you're punting free throws, we're talking top 30 guy in 25 minutes a night. Elite field goal percentage, blocks shots, gets steals, gets rebounds, scores. Nene is 1 year older. Tariq Black is not that good. There's still going to be issues with his minutes because D'Antoni is still going to want to get Nene out there. But I think we're going to see more minutes from Capella this year as he's not dealing with a fractured fibula. So I think we're going to be seeing more of Clint, and I think he's going to be a bit of an underrated prospect, if those punt free throw teams especially. Now, he has improved his free throw shooting. It is definitely a mental issue because he can be a 70% shooter in the D-League. We've seen that. So if he starts to get more comfortable, that could very easily rise up to 60, 65% and really help you in that area. But I think that he is going to be a real breakout candidate. If you want to go deeper, Troy Williams is an interesting name, a guy that showed quite a bit for them at the end of the season, did really well in Summer League. We talk about 3-point streamers and point streamers. I think Williams can be that guy as an offensive option. They've got Tucker and Marmute as their defensive guys, but in terms of their depth at guard, it's not great. You've got Harden, you've got Gordon, you've got Paul, and that's your 3-man rotation. But at times you're going to have to introduce a 4th guy there, and unless you're looking at George DePaula to make the roster, or Bobby Brown to do something, or Isaiah Taylor, which is a possibility. And Williams could be that guy there to play alongside Paul or alongside Harden and maybe hit some threes. So he's a guy that I think, well, he won't break out and become a fantasy starter or anything like that. He'll be a player that more people start to know his name this season, and he becomes a little bit more well-known as a guy. But that's not a real big thing. Royan Patnaik says I should start a nickname campaign for Clint Capella called Swiss Chocolate. Yeah, I'm not big on that one, mate. It's okay, but it feels a little obvious. I need to come up with something better for Clint Capella. I'm with you. I'm with you that he does need a nickname, for sure. Jonas Schneider says, in the first round, do you take Jokic or Curry in a dynasty league? Jokic. Yeah, I would take, especially if it's a real salary league, Jokic, no doubt. I would take Jokic in that situation. The Los Angeles Clippers. a team that we don't really know what's going to be happening with this team. We know Blake Griffin is starting at the 4 if he is healthy in time for the start of the season. We know the Roosters there at the 3. We know DeAndre Jordan is there at the 5. It's the guard situation that we don't know. There's Patrick Beverley, there's Austin Rivers, there's Miloš Teodosic, who is there as well. Who is going to start? At this point, I would assume Beverley and Rivers. There's also Lou Williams as a guard there. But Teodosic is an interesting player to me. His ability to get assists and to hit threes and to score and to get some steals. He's a shit-ass defender, but he can get some steals. Makes him a very, very interesting fantasy option to me. And if him and Beverley were to play the same amount of minutes, Teodosic would be the guy that I would want on my fantasy team. So he could be the guy that could shock people. They could also start a Beverley-Teodosic backcourt. I think that is a possibility, with Beverley obviously taking the defensive responsibilities as Beverley plays more of a spot-up sort of role that he did in Houston last season alongside James Harden. And you put Austin Rivers on the bench as a 29, 30-minute backup, with Lou Williams running the point alongside Austin Rivers. Because if you put a Teodosic, Lou Williams backup pairing, that is just horrendous. That is going to be disgusting on the defensive end, so I'm definitely not there for that. We know that Doc Rivers is not a massive fan of staggering his lineup, so he's going to be like starting 5, backup 5. And if you're going to be running Williams and Teodosic, that is just a horrendous backcourt and could get really killed. So I could see him potentially going with a Teodosic Beverley starting backcourt, or even going Teodosic Rivers and putting Bev in that second unit. But both Teodosic and Beverley, sure, Beverley should be able to have a big step forward from last season, I think. And I think Teodosic could be a real surprise packet that I'd be very, very interested in having a look at with one of my last picks. As for Austin Rivers, well, his ADP suggests that people are really interested in him at 116. It's not that high, but that means they're looking at drafting him. I'm not fully there on Rivers as a fantasy option this year. His percentages are shit. I just don't think he's going to be getting 35 minutes a night. I know that he's not going to be running the point, and the times that he's had success before has been when Chris Paul has been out and he's come in and he's run it as a point guard. He won't really be doing that this year because Beverley and Teodosic are both there, so he won't be running the point as much, and that does reduce some of his value. So I think it's Teodosic. I think it's Beverley, and if you want to go deeper, it's my boy Sammy Decker, who could be seeing some significant minutes at the 3 if the Rooster goes down. They don't really have another backup 3 on this team, so Decker, who showed flashes with Houston last season, and when Gallinari misses his standard 15 games, I think you're going to see Decker be picked up in quite a lot of standard leagues for that sort of situation. So I'm in on that. The Los Angeles Lakers. Lonzo Ball, I think you'll be shocked to see how good his projections come out when we release them on Basketball Monster. They look sensationally good. He will be, I believe, the number 1 rookie for fantasy this season. That's something that I've been saying all through the preseason as well. Now, I don't think that he's necessarily going to become a great NBA player. I still have my reservations on it, but for this season, for fantasy, I do think that Lonzo is going to be he's probably going to go too high. Look, I could see him comfortably being a top 50 guy this season, but I can also see him getting drafted in the 30s, and I'm just not willing to take that risk. But if he's there in the 60s, I'm all for it. The guy that I think is a really interesting player is Brandon Ingram. He has got an ADP of 96. He was horrendous for most of last season, like outside the top 300, horrendous. But the last 6 weeks, he started to show something. He's got 111 ability. He should be seeing a bigger scoring load. He should be taking more shots. Hopefully his percentages go up, but I'm not 100% buying that yet because we really have never seen it from him. He was a poor free throw shooter in college, had that 40% three-point rate at Duke, but never been able to really replicate that at any other time, especially last season. But he is definitely a breakout candidate here, and again, he is a prime target for one of those last couple of picks in your draft. He's ADP 96, so he's sort of sitting in the 9th or 10th round, which makes sense. And I do think he's got upside to probably beat that by 20 spots. Doesn't mean that he will. I think the likelihood of him doing it is pretty low, but he does have that opportunity. I don't think that Julius Randle's a great breakout candidate. I don't think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is either. I think that Jordan Clarkson is going to regress, and I don't think that Zubats is a breakout candidate. I think that Ingram and Ball, but that's not really a breakout. But I think Ingram's probably the guy that we want to look at here for the Lakers as their breakout candidate. Let's talk about the Memphis Grizzlies. This is a weird team. They have got so many guys under contract, and players are going to, on guaranteed deals, are going to have to be let go. Guys, like they've signed Mario Chalmers. I don't think he makes the final roster. Jarrell Martin, he might not make the final roster. Troy Daniels, James Ennis, Andy Harrison, any of these guys might not make the final roster. They've got to cut about 3 guys, and they still haven't signed JaMychal Green, who's a restricted free agent. And if they don't sign JaMychal Green, they have got no power forwards unless you're counting on Deontay Davis to step forward. And if Green doesn't sign, Davis is a guy that you take in that last pick in a draft, because he does have all the fantasy tools to do it. He just looks completely out of it on the court. He looks completely lost. He looks like his basketball IQ is as low as it can possibly go. He just looks like he's got no idea what he's doing. But the talent is there. So if Green doesn't sign, Davis is the guy that I want to have a piece of. There's a couple of other guys that are interesting because we don't know what's happening with Tony Allen. Is Tony Allen coming back to this team? That means they've got to cut another bloke. Then if he doesn't come back, who starts at shooting guard? I would have said Benny McLemore, but the guy broke his foot. He should be back at some point in November, early November, so it's not going to be a long absence. And drafting him, especially in a 14-teamer with your last pick and slotting him onto your IR, is probably a decent move. But he'd be a guy that I thought had some opportunities squandered in Sacramento the last couple of years, but does have top 100 potential. The guys who could start in his place and maybe never give that spot back to him are Tyreek Evans, who we know the injury proneness for him. I don't really think he's a breakout, but Wayne Selden is an interesting guy who had some moments last year, started in the playoffs. I thought he was shit the majority of the time, but looked really good in Summer League, super aggressive shooting, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. He would be an intriguing potential last round pick, but I'm not really buying it with Selden. The other guy that you've got to look at, I believe, with one of your last picks is Chandler Parsons. Now, I know that he disappointed so many of us last season with the knee injury. I know that people just have a hatred of Chandler Parsons for whatever reason that is. But at pick 150, pick 140, taking Chandler Parsons to be their starting 3 when they don't have any other options, because if he's healthy, he is that guy. Can he play 30 minutes a night? That is the challenge. But if he does, then he's a top 100 player. I don't think that the bullshit stats we saw from him last season really, I don't think they're going to have really any impact on what we see from him this year. I think if he's healthy, those numbers will be much better. And he is a top 50 ceiling guy. So he is a guy that I think, it's not a breakout because he's been there before. He is definitely value at that spot. Like, he doesn't even have an ESPN ADP at this point. That's how far down he is. Last pick, I'm all for Chandler Parsons with that last pick. Bobby says, what's the status on him? We don't know. We don't know. We've seen him working out in videos. He's moving okay. He's hitting threes. He's jumping. He's getting high arc on his shots. He looks better, but we just don't know what the actual status is. I assume that he'll be ready to start the season. In what capacity, I don't know. I guess it's going to be limited, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's limited for the first month, maybe 2 months in a 25 to 27 minute role, and then maybe you push to 30 minutes in January. But I think that he is worth having a look at in that last pick, and then you see what happens when the actual information starts to come to hand, because we just don't have anything at this point, and teams are being tight-lipped about pretty much everything that's happening in the NBA at the moment. There's not a lot of news. Not a lot of news that's coming out at this point. The Minnesota Timberwolves. Oh, what's a breakout on this team? Wigo? I talked about him the other day. The addition of Jimmy Butler, I think, negates any fourth-year breakout. I don't see him taking a significant step forward. Jeff Teague.
My name is Jeff.
Don't think so. Jim Butler, Karl Towns. Towns could take a step forward. He could become the number 1 player in fantasy, and I think that he was destined probably to do that this year if Butler hadn't arrived. But Butler arriving, that number 1 spot in fantasy, legit the top 8 guys are pretty much interchangeable. Now, whether you want to take Harden or Westbrook or Giannis or Curry or Durant or Kawhi or Towns or Davis at that spot, I don't think you're wrong. I had someone actually message me yesterday. Said, "Look, Josh, I'm in a 7-man league, and we have a draft to choose our draft spot. So I got the number 1 pick. What slot do you think I should take?" And he goes, "I'm thinking I take pick 1." And I go, "In a 7-man league, I'll take pick 7, and I get 2 of those top 8 guys, and I get 2 chances of guys who can become the number 1 player." You're going to get Kawhi most likely, and you could get Davis, you could get Curry, you could get Harden. Shit, you could get bloody Westbrook or Harden even fall to you at that spot. And that is an absolute ripper start to have 2 of those number 1 player contenders on your team. Now back to the task at hand. Who's a breakout player here? No one that's going to have any impact in standard leagues. But the guy we want to look at is going to be Tyus Jones, who now gets an unfettered access to the backup point guard role. He doesn't have Chris Dunn's trashy ass in front of him taking the minutes that should have rightfully been his. So in deeper leagues, Tyus Jones' 16 to 20 minutes a night is going to be important. His ability to get 3 to 4 assists in that time, a steal a game, hit some threes, is going to be important in your 20-team leagues, your 18-team leagues, as a streamer, and even 16-team leagues. So he's a guy that I think takes a step forward where people then go, Tyus Jones is going to be a restricted free agent at the end of 2019. Maybe we should be looking at him, and he could be a Reggie Jackson. He could be a Dennis Schroeder backup guy that then becomes the starter after their rookie contract is over. I think he can become that guy. So he's a guy to look for, but he's just not going to get an option this year to be a real impact guy behind Teague. Unless Teague goes down and Jones comes in, I think that Jones is going to be a really, really interesting player. So he is someone definitely to look at. The New Orleans Pelicans is not a great team again for breakout guys. You're going to have Rondo and Holiday starting, which is just unfathomably stupid to me. You're going to have Boogie and Davis starting at the 4 and the 5. And then at the 3, you're going to have Solomon Hill. You're going to have a melange of crap on the bench with Geordie Crawford, Etuan Moore there. You're going to have my boy Shaq Diallo as the backup big man, hopefully as the primary backup big. But the guy that's interesting to me is Ian Clark, coming across from the Golden State Warriors. Now, I don't love Clark as a player. I think that Pat McCaw was a better player than him last season. But I think in a situation like we've got here with New Orleans, where the Rondé Holiday partnership seems ridiculous to me, I could see a situation where Clark starts over Rondo, and they put Holiday back to power guard. Jesus, they put Holiday back to point guard, and they run Clark as the shooting guard in 27 minutes a night, and he gives you some efficiency, some threes. He handles the ball a little bit as well. The presence of Crawford there, of Moore there, as well as those other backup guards, that 5-man guard rotation probably limits Clark at some point. But I do think that the ability for him is there to at some point perhaps replace Rondo, because Rondo is just not that good. And you can tell me he had 2 good games in the playoffs, and that's fine. And you can tell me the Bulls would have beaten the Celtics if he hadn't got healthy, and I will tell you that that's incorrect. But he's just not that good. And I don't see this partnership working. It seems asinine to me that you would pay your best point guard $150 million and then say, cool, we're just not going to play you in that position anymore because we've got this trash heap guy that used to be good in 2009 coming in. So let's see how that works. Clark's just a guy to keep an eye on. Again, it's a long shot. There's no one that's really standing out. The other guy you look at is Diallo, of course, who should move into that primary backup big with Dante Cunningham no longer on the team, or not on the team as of yet. Ashik and Ajinça being terrible. I think Diallo can step in, maybe play 17 to 20 minutes a night behind Boogie, behind Davis, and really start to showcase what he can do. And potentially, if Cousins leaves, could Diallo be a starter the next season? That's something for all you Dynasty League players to really pay attention to. I really, really like Shaq Diallo. I think there's a lot there to see. In OKC, we've got Russell Westbrook. We've got Paulie George. We know what those guys are. They're going to take somewhat of a hit. I think you're going to see Westbrook's rebounds dip. I think you're going to see both of their shot attempts dip a little bit. But they're still going to be in a very similar position to where they were last year. I think what you'll see is that Harden and Westbrook last year were just so far above everyone else that the hits that they're going to take from the addition of Chris Paul and Paul George joining their teams is going to drop them down so that they become right with everyone else 3 through 8, rather than being 30% better than everyone, which is what they were last year. So I think that's pretty much what happened with Steph Curry last year. He was like 30% better than everyone else. Kevin Durant joined and he came back and was right next to everyone else in that group from 3 to 5 or 3 to 6. And I think a similar thing will happen with Harden and Westbrook this year. If you want to look at breakout guys, I think Alex Abrines is a guy to have a look at. I think he's better than Doug McDermott. With Andre Robertson playing at the 2, you're going to need someone else to come in and do some scoring as a backup behind Robertson, as a backup behind Paul George. And I think Abrines is that guy. He's more athletic than we, I think, give him credit for. As a white European guy, we automatically think can't jump, can't do anything. He's more athletic than that. He's going to hit some threes. We talk about Uncle P being a 3-point streamer. Abrines is that to me, but he can do a little bit more. I think he can do a little bit more with the steals. He's a good free throw shooter. So it's more of a deeper league situation and a streaming situation, but Abrines is the interesting one. And I think Steven Adams could take a step forward. His block rate went completely in the shitter last year. I think it bounces back. He gets more blocks. I think his rebounding comes up as he doesn't allow Russell Westbrook to just go after every single loose ball rebound, and that might help Adams. Now, a lot of people were touting Adams as a top 50 player last year. That was ridiculous. It obviously never came true. But he is a center that you can have a look at if you're willing to deal with his free throw issue, which is an issue. It's close to punt worthy, and if you pair it with someone else of a similar level, you're basically punting it. But he is a guy that I think with one of those later picks, you should be pretty happy with. Now, part of the problem with Adams is last year down the stretch, we saw his minutes decline. He started playing like 28, 29 minutes a game instead of 30 to 31. So does Billy Donovan go back to that? Especially now with Paul George around, we're going to make Enes Kanter play more at center. And does that impact Adams? Yes, that's a possibility. But I also think that Adams could have a degree of a bounce back this season as opposed to what we saw from him last year. The Phoenix Suns. We all know about Devin Booker. People are going to be really, really keen on the old reach around with Devin. He's got the ADP of 42 on ESPN. In their completely screwed up ranks, he's ranked 15th. Ignore that. That's just not accurate at all. I think that he can take a step forward, though. We know his shortcomings as a fantasy player. I think that he has a legitimate chance of cracking the top 50, and I'd be fairly confident that he will be a top 70 guy this year. He has to cut back on his turnovers. He has to cut back just as him as in general, not for fantasy, my turnover thought. And I think he'll do that. But he has to improve his efficiency, number one. And that's one of the things. If he gets his efficiency up on a huge volume of shots, he is going to be a much better player. The other thing with him is that if the Suns are terrible as we expect, then does an Eric Bledsoe shutdown happen again in February where Booker then takes on a massive volume, his assist rate rises, and for fantasy playoffs, he becomes a much better option. So he's a guy, I don't necessarily think it's breakout because, again, he's being drafted very high, but I think he will improve. The guys that we look at as breakout guys is Marquise Chris. I don't believe that Marquise Chris is a good player. I'm not sure he's ever going to become a good player, but I do think that he's going to play minutes and he's going to put up fantasy stats. He's going to be a 1-1 guy. He's going to score and he's going to have some decent field goal percentage, and that makes him a surefire top 100 pick to me, even though I don't think he's good, because it doesn't matter if I think he's good. If I think that Earl Watson's going to play him 30 minutes, that is what matters. And I do think that Earl Watson will play him 30 minutes, assuming that his general dickheadedness doesn't come out and he doesn't get 5 fouls in the first 5 minutes or start doing dumb shit or getting into fights and just being a petulant little dick for the majority of the time, which is what he was the majority of last season. And he showed the same sort of shit in Summer League. So that is the huge concern with Chris. But his potential is definitely there. The other guys we look at, I think people are going to write off TJ Warren. We see his ADP down to 121. He was a top 50 guy for multiple stretches last season. Now, the addition of Josh Jackson does impact that. But let's be honest, Warren, I think, is a better player than Jackson at this point. And while they'll still be able to give both of those guys decent minutes, especially with the Brandon Knight injury, because you'll be able to play Warren or Jackson at the 2 a little bit as well, behind Devin Booker. So they'll both be able to get decent amounts of minutes. And I think that Warren is going to be an underdrafted resource that if he continues the way that he ended last season, he's going to be a huge steal in drafts, at least to start the season. And I think Jackson's lack of scoring and complete lack of shooting is going to really limit what he can do as a contributor in his first season. So I think TJ Warren's a guy to look at, Marquise Chris is a guy to look at, and of course this bloke.
Bite my shiny metal ass.
Dragan Bender broke his ankle last year, didn't play. I still think that he is going to be better than Chris. I still think that he is going to be quite a good NBA player. How they run the front court remains to be seen. Will they run Chris Bender 4-5 lineups? What will they do with Tyson Chandler? Is Alex Len coming back? But I think that we're going to see way more minutes for Bender this year than what we saw last season. And for deeper leagues, you would want to start paying some attention to Dragan. I do think that he is going to be a better player than Chris in the long run. And I think he can be an interesting fantasy contributor who blocks shots, gets assists, scores, hits threes, and can do it pretty efficiently with both percentages in a couple of years' time. And that's more for dynasties. But he's a guy that I think takes a significant step forward this year as opposed to what we saw from him last year. In Portland, the number one guy that everyone's going to be looking at as that breakout player is Jusuf Nurkic. But of course, there are caveats with Jusuf, and that is that he's injury prone. He gets injured a lot. He broke his leg last year. He's had knee problems. Now, he looks in great shape. He's lost a lot of weight, and that's all fantastic. But we have got the injury issue. We've got the petulance issue. He was great for 20 games in Portland, and that's fine, and maybe that continues, but maybe it doesn't. He was putting up out of control numbers. His assists were through the roof. He's got good block numbers. He could be a top 30 player, and there's no denying that. And if someone said, I'm taking him in the 3rd round, I would say, I totally understand why you would do that. Getting a center who's going to lock in at 30 plus minutes a game, and you know what he's going to do role-wise unless he gets injured, that's totally fine to do. But there is an element of risk with him, just with the injuries, just with the behavioral and attitudinal issues, but no one's coming to take his minutes, so to speak. So I do think he's interesting. I also think that they will start Noah Vonleh aside Nurkic at the 4. They did it last year. As soon as Nurkic came across, Vonleh was the starter. Aminu moved to the bench, and Vonleh was that starter, and he started to show some stuff as an elite rebounder. Now, he's not a great offensive player, but he has improved his efficiency with his field goal percentage. He's not a great defensive guy in terms of his steals and blocks, but that can improve. But for deeper leagues, as a rebounding option, I think that Vonleh does start at the 4. Aminu comes off the bench, and then you've got Swanigan and Zachy Collins who play the bulk of the backup minutes on this team, leaving Myers, Leonard, and Ed Davis, I guess, in no man's... There's so many big men on this team, leaving Leonard and Davis in no man's land. But I think that Vonleh is an interesting guy who could cement himself in a year which is his 4th season, heading into restricted free agency, which again is when players often take a big leap. I think Vonleh could cement himself as a decently high minute power forward next to Nurkic, and could be someone that we do run to the waiver wire for in the first couple of weeks of the season. So he is a name just to watch, probably not to draft at this point, more just to watch. But yeah, we saw him starting alongside Nurkic and played really well in that role alongside Yusuf. The Sacramento Kings, a lot of unknowns here. I'm going to assume that George Hill is going to start. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. De'Aaron Fox comes off the bench, plays alongside Hill a little bit. I don't think that Fox is really draftable in standard leagues unless you think that he's just going to play more than Hill, and I don't. Bud Hield at the 2, but there's a massive hole at the 3. Is it going to be Justin Jackson, the 15th pick in the draft? Probably not. Is it going to be 1,000-year-old Vince Carter? If it is, they're in trouble. Is it going to be, I'm not that good, Garrett Temple? Maybe. Or is it going to be Bogdan Bogdanovic, the European rookie who comes across on a $9 million a year contract? It's going to be Bogdan. Now, I think his best position is probably the 2 alongside Hield. Where Hield is going to play, but I think the Bogdan is going to play there as the wing, and he is a prime candidate for a last pick in the draft who could step up and find himself in a 30-minute role. Probably won't, but could. He hits threes. Think of he's Bradley Beal. This is how you should look at his stat set. He's a wing who gets some assists, who hits some threes, who does it very efficiently with his percentages. I think that he is going to be a really interesting player for this year, and there's a huge hole for him to fill.
Giggity!
On the wing there in Sacramento. So, yeah, Bogdan's the other guy. Skal Labissière is the other one I want to look at. People are like, I'm not sure about Skal because Randolph's going to play. Randolph's cooked. Randolph is finished. He's not a starting caliber player anymore. He wasn't last year. I don't think there's any... Jaeger does like him, and Jaeger completely dicked us around with lineups all of last season. But I don't think that Jaeger's going to come in and go, oh, Jesus, what is this, 2014? Zach, you're in, 30 a night, let's go. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to get 28 of Skal and 22 of Zebo. And Zebo play a bit of backup center as well, ahead of Costa Koufos. That's if Randolph is even allowed to play in the NBA, because there is talk that the marijuana charges that he was arrested on could get him not suspended, banned from the NBA, kicked out of the NBA, 2-year suspension, OJ Mayo style from the NBA. So there's a chance that Zach Randolph is not playing at all this year. It's probably a slim chance, but there's a legitimate chance. He wasn't arrested for possession of marijuana. He was arrested for possession with intent to sell, and that can mean you're out. So that's a huge possibility. Regardless of that, I think that boosts Skal, obviously, if Randolph is out. But I think that Skal is a guy that you do look at with the last couple of picks. And I think that he's a chance to be a top 100 guy for this season. Let's look at the San Antonio Spurs. There's not a lot here. You can look at DeJounte Murray. Tone Parker's not going to be back until January at the earliest. And even when he comes back, he's not going to be at full tilt. And even when he does come back at full tilt, Tone Parker's full tilt is not that good anymore. Now, Murray will probably go into irrelevancy when Parker returns, but you're probably going to get 2, maybe 3 months out of him. I still don't think that he's necessarily going to be all that great, because even if he starts, Pat Mills is going to get the bulk of the minutes there at the point guard position. Now, Mills is a guy that is interesting. I don't think he's as good a fantasy player as what many people do. He had his moments. He struggled down the stretch last season, had a really good start to the year, but then did struggle. He's more just of a 3-point streaming sort of guy. I think he will have to get some more assists, but a lot of those assists will now end up going to Kawhi Leonard, I think, as well, as they run more through Kawhi, and Mills spots up off him a little bit. So Mills is fine as a late round pick, but I don't think his upside's that high. If Rudy Gay can't recapture any of his form and is still struggling with injury, Kyle Anderson's a guy that, especially for the start of the season, I think can really step into that role that's going to be left there, play some backup 4, some backup 3, maybe some backup 2 as well. And I like Kyle Anderson's fantasy game. So he is a player that I think is worth considering, but more as a deeper league guy. Now, I had a couple of questions here. Bobby also throws in, so let's go to Rob first. He says, Rob Purchase says, I hope that it's going to be Justin Jackson. Why would you hope that? I assume you own him in a draft. Jackson is not as good as Bogdanovic, in my opinion. Bobby Madry says that Willie Cauley-Stein also had a nice end of the year. He did. I'm not really counting him as a breakout. I think he's pretty much sort of solidified where he is. And then Muhammad Nah says, Yurios Papianis for the second half after the Kings start shutting down veteran players. The problem with that is, Muhammad, is that their 2 starting players at the 4 and the 5 aren't veteran players. They're Scalabrine and they're Willie Cauley-Stein, so they're not guys who are going to get shut down. Yeah, Randolph could go. Costa Koufos could get shut down, and Papianis can come in and play a 17 to 18 minute a night role. He's not coming in and playing, well, he might play 20. He's not coming in and playing 30 because the 2 guys ahead of him are not old veterans. So there is that possibility in the 16-team leagues, 18-team leagues, that Papianis is fine for March and April, but he's not jumping into top 150 territory, and I don't believe in Papianis as a good player. So there is that. Let's go on to the last team in the Western Conference, and that is the Utah Jazz. And here is a team where there are some openings. We know what Rudy Gobert is. I think he's going to get a much bigger chunk of the offense. His scoring is going to go up, and he is a pretty comfortable second rounder. I don't think I'd reach into the first for him, but he's a pretty comfortable second rounder. Ravishing Rick Rubio on his new team. If he escapes the top 50, it's ludicrous. His ADP is 61 on ESPN, and they are joking if they think that's realistic. That's not happening. There's 2 guys I think are breakout guys and another guy to look at. The other guy to look at is Derek Favors. He was shithouse last year. There's no doubt about that. But if he is back healthy and he is starting at power forward, which we don't know whether he will, whether they'll go small, because at the end of last year, they refused to play Favors at the 4 at all. He was playing exclusively as the backup center as they went Joe Johnson, Boris Diaw at the 4. Now, will they do that again? I think that's a possibility, talking to people with the Jazz. He's saying that Quinn Snyder does want to go small, so maybe Favors doesn't get that starting job back. I think he probably does, and I think with a late pick he is fine. But the 2 guys who I'm fairly confident in are Rocket Rodney Hood and Jingle and Joe Ingles. Rocket's a guy that struggled through his injuries last season. You're going to be able to get him at a discount this year with an ADP of 118. You're going to be able to get him with one of those later picks, and he can be a 20-point per game scorer. He might not do everything else well, but he could hit 2.5 to 3 threes a game. He could get 2 assists and a steal a game, and he could improve his efficiency. And if you're getting that with your 11th pick, a 20-point per game scorer, you should be really happy with it. We need him to stay healthy. We need his asshole to stop from falling out. We need his knees to be fine. But I think he's going to be okay in that regard. I think he'll miss some games. I think there's no problem with that. I think he'll miss some games, but I think he's a fine late pick. The other one who is completely off the radar, who ESPN has got ranked 500th, is Jinglin Joe. He's getting 30 minutes a night. He's replacing Gordon Hayward. He will hit threes at an efficient, very efficient rate. He will get steals. He will get assists. He could get 4 assists per game. He's not going to score enough, or he's not going to score much, but he has a real top 75 chance just through his steals, assists, threes, and efficiency. And all those categories count. He is that guy, and you can get him with a very late pick. Joe Ingles, to me, is probably the big breakout player almost in the entire Western Conference that is going to be an absolute steal on draft days. And he'll be a guy that, again, if he is there with my last pick, there is no doubt that I'm getting him. And he probably won't last to that last pick. Those steals can be super valuable, paired with the threes, paired with the assists, paired with the efficiency. It's a really good combination. And I think that's where Jinglen sits. That does it for the Western Conference breakouts. I did tell you I was going to talk about the Red Rock 30-team Rotisserie Dynasty League, and I will, because we are 8 rounds in. I've got 8 picks. Sometimes I tweet it out and people ask me, what pick did you get this guy? I want to explain the situation of the format. In this draft, we had a draft for, much like I talked about the guy earlier with his 7-team league. We had a draft to choose draft slot. So you could pick what pick you wanted to pick from. So whatever pick you picked in the first round, every round after that, you picked opposite. So it wasn't a snake draft. It wasn't if you picked at 1, then you picked at 30 in round 2, and then 1 in round 3. If you picked at pick 1, you picked in 30 at pick 30 in every other round. In the first round, only one player from every team could be drafted. So Steph and KD both couldn't be drafted. Russ and Paul George both couldn't be drafted. Harden and Chris Paul both couldn't be drafted. So the top of that second round was going to be full of stars. Jim Butler was going to be there. There's going to be some absolute studs there. Now, I had 4th choice of draft spot, and I chose pick 30, meaning that after everyone else had gone through the first round, I got whatever team was left over. But then I also got the first pick in the second round, meaning I was going to have either Stephen Curry or Kevin Durant, and that's what I wanted. So the way it worked out is the team that was left over was the Sacramento Kings. No one wanted to take a King as their first player, so I didn't. I picked George Hill with that pick. And then, of course, with the first pick in the second round, I took Steph. So that was the beginning of my team. And then I had the first pick in every round after that. At pick 61, I selected Al Horford. I think that's some value there for me. Yeah, the addition of Gordon Hayward probably does hurt him offensively, but I'm happy to get him there. At pick 91, I think this is a steal, is Avery Bradley. I know his rebounds will go down in Detroit, but I think he's going to have a bigger chunk of the offense going through him, and I couldn't be happy with getting Bradley at pick 91. At pick 121, I'm not normally one to go big on rookies in dynasty startups. I want to win straight away. But when John Collins is sitting there at 121, and I think he can actually exceed that ranking for this season, and he's a rookie, I snapped it up. So I grabbed Johnny Collins at 121. At 151, Rashawn Holmes was available. Not only is he a bargaining chip for the Embiid owner if Embiid gets hurt, at 151, I think he exceeds that value even in a backup role. You know how much I love Holmes. That was 151. 181, which to me is absolute theft. Dirk Nowitzki. Now, I know he's old. I know it's a dynasty league. But if I can get Dirk at 181 for 2 years, I'm okay with that. I think that's, especially when he's not even going to be in my starting lineup. He's a bench player. So I'm okay with that. And I can just rotate Dirk in when he has a heavy schedule week. At pick 211, I selected Al-Farouq Aminu. Again, I think that's just way too late for Aminu. A lot of people are going really young with some of these picks, and I understand that. It's just not the way that I tend to go. But some of the guys that got picked ahead of Aminu here, like Trevor Booker, Kyle Kuzma, Noah Vonleh, Delon Wright, TJ McConnell, Pascal Siakam, Tone Snell, Kyle Anderson, Derek White, they all got picked ahead of him. So I was very happy to take Al-Farouq Aminu at that spot. I've got 14 picks left until my next pick, and I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to select with that one. Hopefully they last, but that's how that Roto League is currently going along. All right, I think we are done here. Reminder, Patreon people, if you want to become a Patreon subscriber, you do get exclusive access to the Slack channel where you can chat with me and other knowledgeable fantasy basketball people who are patrons. Either direct message me in private on there or in the different channels that we've got there to discuss lineups and get some group think type action happening. So $3 plus patrons, you get access to that. And if you are a $3 patron and you haven't received the link, let me know and I'll get it out to you to get you invited into that room. Make sure you're checking about Basketball Monster. I will definitely tell you when we're open for memberships. The schedule grid is available, so you can go check that out to have a look at how the schedule plays out. And of course, check out the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network to check out all the information about your team every day. If you want to check out what happens with the latest signings of your team. KJ McDaniels going to Toronto. Let's not get overly excited about KJ McDaniels, everyone. He's not good, but he has gone to Toronto. If you want to hear Sean Woodley talk about that on Locked On Raptors, go listen to one of his episodes that'll be coming out in the next couple of days talking about the KJ McDaniels signing. That's what the Locked On podcast does. It gives you the hyper detailed information on all the local teams. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. David Fisdale.